Between a U.S. president and a North Korean leader. The goal is the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, and the president suggesting it is achievable.
On June 12th, in Singapore, I'll be meeting with Kim Jong-un to pursue a future of peace and security for the world, for the whole world.
Senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott is following all of this for us from London this morning. So, Greg, what's this we're learning and hearing about the North limiting missile launches?
They have some new interesting developments, Julie. More goodwill gestures, apparently, from North Korea in the run-up to this summit now announced for June 12th between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. North Korean officials reportedly telling UN Civil Aviation Authority officials that they will be no longer conducting unannounced ICBM or mid-range missile tests because, in their words, there's no need. They already have finished their nuclear arsenal. Now, this is important, Julie, because with all the talk of denuclearization, we've heard less talk about limiting the means of getting those weapons to the targets, like the United States. We're talking about missiles. Meanwhile, there are more indications that North Korea might be moving to close down its one known nuclear testing site. According to satellite photography and some experts, there have been 6 structures removed from that site just in the past 2 weeks. Remember, North Korea promising to dismantle that site and show it to international inspectors, even journalists. But of course, there's another report in the past day, Julie, that says that this site is already too damaged to be used again. Always a double-edged sword.
Oh, yes. And what is happening with the freed detainees and plans for the summit?
Boy, super news about the freed detainees, Julie. They remain in Walter Reed Medical Center getting their checkups, but the reports we are getting is that they are in good spirits, they're coping well, and we're also learning that they could be reunited with their families today. We might even get a glimpse of that. This as, yes, the nuts and bolts planning for this summit, now set for Singapore in 1 month's time, goes on. I was on the phone talking to folks through the night in Singapore, trying to nail down the exact location within that country, city-state. No location yet, but in hindsight, it's a good choice, according to analysts. Secure, well-situated, well-linked. Many summits and other conferences have been held there. Finally, one of my close sources with these talks, preparatory talks, say that the summit might last longer than 24 hours, but generally we're thinking it's going to be a one-day wonder with a big announcement at the end. Of course, positive words, and then the actions come after that. Back to you, Julie.
All right, Greg Palcott, thank you so much. Bill.
Thank you, Julie. 3 past the hour. Another alert right now. It's been a long, bitter battle. Leading Republicans now in the House, Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy, meeting with senior intel officials. They're looking for and looking at classified documents that may be connected to the Mueller matter. Reaction from Darrell Issa last hour right here on America's Newsroom.
In this case, the material that Devin Nunes is looking for will embarrass, no question at all, the Department of Justice and the FBI, and is likely to represent at least misconduct, if not breaking of the law.
Darrell Issa right there. Catherine Herridge with us now live in D.C. Catherine, good morning to you. We're trying to read between the lines here. Tell us more about this meeting and what we may have learned.
Well, thank you, Bill, and good morning. The chairman of the House Intelligence and Government Oversight Committees met with the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, as well as FBI and intelligence officials. The meeting was brokered after Congressman Nunes issued a subpoena April 30th for records about alleged government surveillance abuse during the 2016 election. A source familiar with the matter said the classified records that relate to an individual intelligence source are as significant to the surveillance abuse investigation as the so-called Trump dossier used by the FBI and Justice Department to secure a surveillance warrant for Trump campaign aide Carter Page. The unverified Trump dossier that contains salacious allegations was opposition research funded by the DNC and Clinton campaign. The House Speaker is backing this records request.
I think this request is wholly appropriate. It's completely within the scope of the investigation that's been ongoing for a while with respect to FISA. I actually think that this is something that probably should have been answered a while ago.
Chairman issued a statement late yesterday saying the dialogue will continue next week, and a Justice Department spokeswoman said they welcome the opportunity to work on a resolution and accommodate the request, Bill.
Some old Senate testimony, too, is getting a second look. Catherine, what about that?
Well, that's right, Bill. The head of Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson, the firm that was paid by the Clinton campaign and DNC for the Trump dossier, testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee behind closed doors. And in January of this year, the committee's ranking Democrat, Senator Dianne Feinstein, made these transcripts public. A source close to the matter tells Fox News there is renewed interest in Simpson's testimony. Simpson was asked about his contact with former British spy Christopher Steele, who did the underlying research for the Trump dossier. Simpson told Senate investigators, quote, essentially what Steele told me was that they, the FBI, had other intelligence about this matter from an internal Trump campaign source, and that they, my understanding was that they, the FBI, believed Chris at this point, and that they believe Chris's information might be credible. Fox News is reaching out to Glenn Simpson for additional comment on that testimony, Bill.
Okay, Catherine, thank you for that. Lowdown in D.C. Thanks, Catherine. Julie has more.
All right, for more on this, William McGurn is a columnist for the Wall Street Journal and a Fox News contributor. Bill, good morning to you. Wow, some stunning information coming out of this. First of all, what's your thought?
Well, look, it's easy to get lost in the minutia of this, but basically there are two broad questions, two broad sets of questions. The first is, what did the FBI know and when did they know it? What launched this investigation? That's part of Congress's request to justice and the FBI. And the second is, did they have someone, as Mr. Simpson intimated, did they have someone in the Trump campaign spying on it, or a source within the Trump campaign? And that's what we've been. Look, the end goal for Congress is to find out what happened in 2016, what did the Russians do, and what did our own law enforcement and intelligence agencies do.
The greatest concern you have when you read this, first of all, is did the FBI and the Justice Department hide something? It seems they hid something. If they didn't want to hide, if they had nothing to hide, you don't hide something. I mean, it's basically
and this is only coming out. The Congress will get the information because they can impeach, they can find someone in contempt. They have a lot of tools, and they're clearly willing to use it because Mr. Ryan, you see, is back. Devin Nunes, so is Steve Scalise, so is Kevin McCarthy. That means the conference is unified, and they're going to get this. And this is important in this case because one of the questions is the behavior, again, of Justice and the FBI and the broader intel community. So they're not exactly disinterested partners. You know, they also keep screaming that if we disclose any of this information to Congress, we're going to harm national security. Usually what it does is harm their own reputation.
Yeah, they're afraid of harming international relationships. Haven't they actually done more harm than good by hiding? I always say to my children, lying is not the way.
Well, look at this case. They were saying we can't, they sent a letter back to Chairman Nunes, said we can't give you this information because it would identify a source, it would threaten lives, it would jeopardize our partnerships with other countries and imperil national security. Well, the Washington Post story on this carried a lot of details. This is an American that they're looking at. They gave out more information than you would get otherwise. So they're playing a double game here, and that's part of the reasoning for the stiffening spine in Congress. They feel that they've been gamed by Justice and the FBI.
I mean, I think we all kind of saw this coming. I mean, there was a subpoena, they did not comply. There's a reason why you don't comply.
And the subpoena took months for most of, I mean, not in this case, in this particular one, but they had requested stuff for months and it was ignored.
I want to read part of Strassel's op-ed here because this part is key. We also know that among the Justice Department's stated reasons for not complying with the Nunes subpoena was its worry that to do so might damage international relationships. We just talked about this. This suggests the source may be overseas, have ties to foreign intelligence or both. That's notable given the highly suspicious role foreigners have played in this escapade. I mean, what happens next?
Well, what happens next? Congress is going to see this, but what they're trying to do, they're groping in the dark for pieces to a puzzle, and they've got some of the pieces, but there are some key ones missing, and when you find one thing, it leads to another. And there's still a huge backlog of documents that they're trying to seek from Justice and the FBI, which have not been cooperative. I mean, the Wall Street Journal has, of course, been very clear saying Donald Trump could fix this in an instant. He has the power to declassify, and we believe he should stop this nonsense and order this stuff declassified.
In a news conference yesterday, House Speaker Paul Ryan pointed out Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes, his details on the secret source was, quote, wholly appropriate, completely within the scope of the committee's long-running FBI investigation, and something that probably should have been answered a while ago. Our head's going to roll.
Well, we'll see. It depends on whether they continue to be intransigent. Look, an individual congressman can't say, I need to see this. You know, Mr. Rosenstein said that we can't just let Congress go rummaging through our files. Well, I can't just demand this, but when Congress is acting as a body through its appropriate committees, it is a separate and co-equal branch of government. Congress created the Justice Department and funds it and could abolish it. So this idea that the unelected parts of government are not accountable to the elected parts is just mind-boggling.
Rod Rosenstein accuses the House of extortion.
Extortion and rummaging through. They're actually making very specific requests.
All right, Bill McGurn, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, as always.
Check it out. 10 minutes past the hour now. President Trump vowing to get the border wall built. So what's the holdup? We'll talk with a candidate who could be on the front lines of that battle in a moment right here. Julie?
Plus, President Trump with a raucous rally last night after picking up several key foreign policy wins this week. He's making the case that America is back.
We racked up trillions of dollars in trade deficits, also known as losses. America's long silence is over. America is respected again. Different ball game. Opportunities for prosperity and for peace. All of these changes are happening because America is being respected again.
They have a little bit of the president last night in Indiana, touting his accomplishments, a big rally capping off a big week on the foreign policy and the domestic front for the White House. The author of a new book called Us Versus Them, The Failure of Globalism, is doing quite well, and the author from the Eurasia Group is Ian Bremmer. Nice to see you, Ian, and welcome back to our program here. I don't know, would you pick out an event from the past week that may advance the cause of this administration more than others? Because my sense is in the West Wing, they've had their backs against the wall on a lot of things for a lot of days for more than a year. But they strung together a series of things this week that really plays to what this president is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, look, this administration does not care very much if allies aren't happy as long as they're getting wins. And so from their perspective, across the board, this has been a very good week in foreign policy. From everyone's perspective, the one you'd pick out as the win is North Korea, because that's one where both Democratic and Republican presidents over the past decades have gotten absolutely nothing done, and where the Trump administration has been able to not only secure these three prisoners, hostages in a very cinematic moment, but also there is a suspension of ICBM testing. Trump said when he came in, do not have the ability to hit the lower 48 with a missile. Right now, they're not advancing that program. They're also engaging in diplomacy with the Chinese, with the South Koreans, and very soon, as you know, in Singapore, with President Trump himself. So the trajectory on that relationship has been significantly more positive under Trump than other people, and they deserve some credit for that.
I'll get back to the allies in a moment here. New York Times headline here, put it on screen. America is respected again, Trump says in Elkhart, Indiana, city Obama once championed. That for the New York Times today. Go a little further inside that article. I think this is the key quote. Reading, Mr. Trump appeared before an excited crowd to share his administration's track record. Here you go, Ian. North Korea had freed 3 American prisoners. The United States has withdrawn from the nuclear agreement with Iran, and the American embassy would soon open in Jerusalem. That comes on Monday.
Yes.
Next week.
So the last 2 of those are absolutely seen as wins by the Trump administration and supporters. They're enormously unpopular outside of the United States. In the case of the decision on Jerusalem, only a few Central American countries support the United States on that decision. And in the case of the pulling out of the Iran deal, Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel and the Saudi Crown Prince, as well as probably the UAE, though they haven't said very much, they support the U.S. Everyone else opposed. So the question is, if you're sitting here at a poker table and you've got the biggest stack of chips, almost doesn't matter if you have a good hand or a bad hand. If you're pushing all in, you get everyone to fold an awful lot, right? You can win a lot of hands. And we're seeing Trump do that on South Korea trade deal. We see it on the Brazil trade deal. We may see it on NAFTA relatively soon. We saw it on North Korea. It's even possible that on Iran, you know, if we destroy their economy with these sanctions, the Europeans are going to be deeply unhappy, but they could come back and say, we need some help.
That is an excellent point. And Iran's economy is really suffering right now.
It really is.
You're making the case that you have to win the argument with your allies. And if you do, you can claim success on a lot of this.
See, I am actually closer to Secretary of State Pompeo than I am Trump on the Iran decision, where Pompeo didn't like the deal, but he really thought that there was movement of the Europeans, our allies, with the United States to actually make it tougher against the Iranians. Say, you know, if they start building nukes after 10 years, we're going to actually snap back with even tougher sanctions. There was a process. Pompeo wanted Trump to take some time so that we could say we're listening to the French, we're listening to the Germans, we're not just going to pull out of the deal by ourselves. We want our allies with us, because the biggest negative from what's happened in the last week is that the French president, who Trump gets along with pretty well, and the German chancellor, who Trump doesn't really like, both came to the United States, and their top priority was do something with us on Iran, and Trump told his allies, drop dead. And over time, if you want those allies to help you, not just be scared of you, not just power equals fear, but that they actually want to work with us over the long time, this is making it harder.
Let me just mention 5 terror suspects. Terror leaders, I should characterize, in Iraq were picked up on a joint operation between the U.S. and the Iraqi forces this past week. Do not let that slide. Your book, you make the case that people are reading it. How come? Why are they engaged in this globalist dialogue now?
Look, I think that the United States right now feels more divided than it has at any point, certainly since I've been alive. Even though our economy is doing really well, even though we're saying we're putting these wins on the board, I think people are more concerned that the world feels dangerous at the same time that the United States, the markets feel so good, and I think they're worried about that. So more people are interested in the things you just asked me about, the Iran deal, North Korea.
Change could do that.
Pieces are in play.
Change could leave you a bit insecure. But again, it comes back to whether or not you can win the arguments with your allies. And if you do, you're going to have a lot of success.
Sure. Good to see you, man.
Thank you. Good luck on the book.
My pleasure.
Okay. Ian Bremmer here. You bet. Julie, what's next?
All right. New details just revealed in the investigation into the deaths of 4 American soldiers ambushed by more than 100 ISIS fighters overseas. We're going to be learning now more about what has contributed to this attack.
Kelly Sadler made light of the Arizona senator's opposition to CIA nominee Gina Haspel this week, saying, quote, "It doesn't matter. He's dying anyway," end quote. The senator's wife, Cindy McCain, later tweeting yesterday at Kelly Sadler, "May I remind you, my husband has a family, 7 children and 5 grandchildren." So far, no response from Senator McCain or directly from the White House on that.
Fox News alert: the Pentagon releasing a report on the investigation into the deaths of 4 American soldiers in an ambush in Niger. The men killed in a surprise attack overrun by about 100 ISIS fighters.
All of our soldiers fought valiantly that day. And there were a series of contributing factors to what occurred in Tongo, but none of those contributing factors are the direct cause of the enemy attack in Tongo. The direct cause of the enemy attack in Tongo is that the enemy achieved tactical surprise there, and our forces were outnumbered approximately 3-1.
Lucas Tomlinson is standing by live at the Pentagon for us. And Lucas, did the investigation find fault with any U.S. military leaders?
No, it didn't, Julie. The investigation blamed a lack of training and the Special Forces team's decision to go after an ISIS leader without proper authority. The head of U.S. forces in Africa says changes have been made since the October ambush.
We are now far more prudent in our missions. The missions that we actually accompany on have to have some type of strategic value in terms of the enemy we're going against. Do they have a strategic threat to the United States? And what this has done is it has allowed these teams perhaps to do the tempo that they would like.
The Pentagon released this video reconstructing the attack. The report blamed the Special Forces team leader for mischaracterizing the mission up the chain of command. The team leader claimed he was conducting a routine meeting with local leaders, when in fact he set out to pursue a known ISIS leader who played a role in kidnapping an American aid worker in Niger in 2016. Now, since the attack, armed drones are now flying over Niger, Julie.
So based on what the general said, Lucas, it sounds like the U.S. military has scaled back operations in West Africa.
That's right, Julie. In the wake of the October 4th attack, the head of U.S. Special Operations Forces in Africa has ordered his troops to plan missions that keep them from direct combat. Of the roughly 800 U.S. troops in Niger, they will mostly now remain on fortified command centers and advise local forces only. They must get approval for missions from their headquarters in Germany. In addition to the 4 American soldiers killed, 2 others were wounded, including the team leader. It took 36 hours to find the body of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. The general who led the investigation said he was not left behind.
The search for Sergeant LaDavid Johnson never stopped. He ran 960 meters. He ran a long way from where he was last seen, and he made his last stand where he fought to the end under a dense thorny tree.
In a statement, Senator Marco Rubio urged the Pentagon to consider disciplinary actions. Julie?
All right, Lucas Tomlinson, thank you.
So 3 Americans freed from North Korea, big news, and apparently that news did not go over well with Senator Chuck Schumer. What he said on a day of patriotism. Bit of red, white, and blue out there. That's next.
High School in Palmdale, California. Palmdale is about 1 hour north of Los Angeles, and if you check Twitter and you look up Highland High School, there are a slurry of tweets by students basically saying that there's a kid at Highland with a gun. Don't come to Highland High School. Unfortunately, it has come to this again to bring you this breaking news. Of course, as soon as we get more information on this high school shooting, we'll bring it to you here on America's Newsroom.
The Democrats, who are just obstructionists, that's all they can do. The Democrats have had a lock on the Hispanic vote, and they've had a lock on the African-American vote. No longer.
Well, so President Trump's trying to make the case that Democrats are trying to block his agenda even when they agree with him. The president calling out Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on Twitter. Here we go. Senator crying Chuck Schumer fought hard against the bad Iran deal, even going at it with President Obama, and then voted against it. Now he says I should not have terminated the deal, but he doesn't really believe that. Same with Comey. Thought he was terrible until I fired him. Senator Schumer hitting back by simply tweeting the hashtag #BeBest, which is a reference to First Lady Melania Trump's initiative against online bullying that happened earlier in the week. Chris Wilson, former Ted Cruz campaign pollster, CEO of WPA Intelligence, Marjorie Clifton, former consultant of the Obama team and a principal of Clifton Consulting. Good day to both of you. Chris, what do you make of Chuck Schumer's position from 2 years ago, being against it before he was for it?
Well, you know, one of the best things about Donald Trump is he doesn't adhere to the polite fictions of Washington, and he's not afraid to call out the hypocrisy of people like Chuck Schumer, and whenever they are taking positions that are contrary to where they were a couple of years ago. Like you said, he was against this deal, now he says for it. And whereas this makes for fun for the New York tabloids, the bigger picture probably didn't mean a lot. Chuck Schumer's not going to get Donald Trump back into the Iran deal any more than Donald Trump's going to get Chuck Schumer to stop spouting partisan talking points on an ongoing basis.
Okay, all right. Marjorie, I want you to weigh in on this, but there's another thing to consider here, and that's his reaction to these 3 Americans coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is what he said on the Senate floor just yesterday about that.
Their release should not be exalted. It should be expected. It is no great accomplishment of Kim Jong-un to do this. And when the president does it, he weakens American foreign policy and puts Americans at risk around the world.
No great accomplishment. I don't know, Marjorie. I think there's a lot of folks out there that would disagree with that. Why did he take that position?
Well, first of all, I'd say it's okay for people to disagree. I think a healthy government has tension, has debate around issues.
3 Americans
how we
came
debate,
home safe,
well, no, but
sound.
But the
That's a
point
good story.
the point I want to make is that how we debate those, the words we use. So first of all, name calling, especially by the President of the United States, is just not acceptable. It's not acceptable by anyone. Schumer pushing back on the release of the Americans, he's not the only one. So John McCain also was pushing back on this. You had former CIA Director John Brennan pushing back on this.
Why not just celebrate it? I mean, is it that hard? This is a really good moment. You know how many people got up in the middle of the night to watch these men come home? That was a cool, patriotic USA red, white, and blue day.
Mm-hmm. Diplomacy is a game of chess. It is not a simple victory in the moment. And the relationship with North Korea is a long-standing, challenging one. And so celebrating a victory isn't just as simple as celebrating a victory. It has to do with why were those people detained? Should they have been held in the first place? And should we celebrate something that is a given and should be expected, which was in this case? They should not have been held to begin with.
We know the answers to all of that. However, he's got a meeting with this man in a month from now. You can see what he's doing, Chris. He's trying to keep the relationship together.
Yeah, he is.
For
and,
the moment. I mean, do you agree with Marjorie on those points?
No, I don't. Well, I do agree that, look, the hostages should have never been taken. But, if Dennis Rodman had negotiated the release of these hostages, Chuck Schumer would have dyed his hair pink in celebration of Rodman's success here. I think it's an unfortunate aspect of the fact that we cannot come together to celebrate something as monumental as getting 3 hostages out of North Korea. And it should be at least for a few hours. Let's say, hey, you know what? Job well done.
Yeah. How about that, Marjorie? I mean, you're not going to dye your hair pink, are you?
No, but I'm also not afraid to disagree with Chuck Schumer if he's saying something that doesn't resonate.
You don't disagree with him on this point, right?
What I do understand is that international diplomacy is complicated, just like with Russia. I mean, it's the same criticism that Trump is receiving from Republicans and Democrats alike about celebrating Putin in one moment and then pushing back in another. It's a complicated relationship. And so, again, that's why I trust people who study this, who've been in that for a long time, like John McCain. And I think we just need to be thoughtful about it. It's not as simple as publicity and media on any topic, any of these topics.
I understand the argument you're making. However, Chris, without the pressure of James Mattis, without the big-time talk of now President Trump, this is likely not happening. Yeah, I think the 3 of us can agree on that.
That's right. And I think look, I worked for Ted Cruz. I've been as critical of Donald Trump over the course of the last couple of years as anybody else, but I think we should be able to come together and celebrate successes. And this is inarguably a success. And I think we've got to look at his approach to foreign policy and say he has been successful. And candidly, in the last couple of years, far more successful than Barack Obama was in 8 years. And I think that's almost inarguable to partisan differences. And I'm sure Marjorie and I would disagree on pulling out of the Iran deal, but I would consider that another success. It's a promise made and a promise kept. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem, another promise made, promise kept.
Monday.
I think I stand back and say, look, he's doing a good job when it comes to foreign policy.
So you're not turning your hair pink, are you, Chris?
Well, who knows? Give it time.
Marjorie, thank you for your time. Krista, thank you for your time as well. Great to have you two back. Thanks.
Thank you.
A major push underway to reform food stamps with tighter work requirements dominating talks over the Farm Bill. President Trump meeting yesterday with key lawmakers and last night giving a big shout out to America's farmers. Listen.
We love our farmers. We're taking care of our farmers, and we love our factory workers. We love our workers.
Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel following this one for us in Washington this morning. Hey, Mike.
Julie, good morning. The House is expected to vote on a new farm bill next week, the first critical step in a long legislative process, and efforts to get it done have heated up. The current farm bill expires September 30th, and lawmakers are trying to pass a new 5-year agreement. While much of the package deals with crop insurance and commodity programs, food stamps are a major component, and Republican leaders are arguing with low unemployment if people receiving food stamps are capable of work, they should work to get their benefits. If they cannot find work, GOP leaders say they should get a spot in a job training program. President Trump clearly wants tougher work requirements, and he met with the House and Senate chairman leading the Farm Bill effort yesterday before traveling to Indiana last night. I asked the House Agriculture chairman this morning about those talks with the president.
I had a conversation with him yesterday. Pat Robertson and I went to the White House to visit with him. He likes what's going on in the House version of the Farm Bill. Good, strong work requirements. We did not talk about a veto. I asked him for his support for the Farm Bill to try to get it out of the House. He had conversations with Pat Roberts that are appropriate for Pat and him to have a conversation with, but no veto threat.
Some Democrats worry the House Farm Bill may go too far in shifting from benefits to job training.
Let's come to the table. Let's figure out ways of stamping out waste, fraud, and abuse that aren't going to, do a disservice to the mission of the food stamp program, which is to help people address their food insecurity and fight hunger.
The House Speaker told reporters yesterday soon lawmakers will be voting on a farm bill that includes important reforms that are proven to get people off the sidelines and into full-time employment. Julie?
Mike Emanuel, thank you.
So we've seen President Trump hitting the road now, trying to sell that border wall to the American people. In a moment, we'll talk to the youngest person running for Congress in 2018. She's from San Diego. We'll hear what she says on the argument about the president's plan. Coming up.
We have already begun the construction of the wall, and so many other things are following. We will have those borders extremely strong, extremely powerful, and we will have laws that match the border.
7 a.m. West Coast time, about 40 minutes ago, reports of a man with a gun on campus at a high school called Highland High School in Palmdale. Police have responded. They are now working that scene. We don't have a lot more information after that. This is about an hour north of L.A., as I mentioned, so we're watching this story. More details, certainly hoping for a calm scene there. But frankly, that's about all the information we have at the moment. So we're watching it. Palmdale, California. More information coming up here on America's Newsroom.
We are going to build the wall. We are already starting the wall. If we don't give them the wall, they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on Governor Moonbeam in California. Right? But you know what I did? Something I would normally not do, which means in life I'm getting nicer as I get older. I said, let's build a wall for San Diego.
President Trump insisting on the need for a wall in Southern California during a campaign-style rally in Indiana last night. My next guest is a Republican looking to unseat Democratic San Diego Congresswoman Susan Davis. She's also the youngest person running for Congress in 2018, Republican candidate Morgan Murtaugh. Thank you very much, Morgan. And you're an inspirational millennial.
Thank you.
It's very good to see. This is excellent. All right. You're campaigning on issues very dear to the president, namely the immigration issue.
Exactly.
Last night at the campaign, the president basically talked about the need not only to build a wall, but he talked about starting it in San Diego. And as I understand it, your grandparents migrated to this country, to San Diego from Mexico. So I want to hear your thoughts on the wall.
Exactly. My grandparents, as you said, immigrated here from Mexico in 1968, seeking a better life for our family. And so I really understand the need for having people here that are good people and hardworking Mexican immigrants, any immigrant. But the wall is a completely separate issue. Until 2 years ago, everyone knew that and understood that securing the border and reforming immigration are two completely different issues. Securing the border is about a national security issue. And I've had two very enlightening border tours with Border Patrol out here recently, and I've seen firsthand the negligence of our federal government when it comes to securing our border. There are holes, giant gaping holes, where people can just walk right across and walk into San Diego. And this is not an immigration issue. This is not an anti-Mexican issue. This is very much a national security issue. So Border Patrol needs this, and I'm willing to do everything that I can to help with Border Patrol and make their jobs easier.
The president also drove home how important it is for Republicans to keep control of Congress. What did you think of his message last night when he said that if Democrats get control of Congress, that they're going to raise taxes, destroy your jobs, and then knock the hell out of your border?
Well, it's true. I mean, Democrats have made it clear that they are going to do everything they can to obstruct the president's message and the president's agenda. So it is very important that if Republicans want the president's agenda, to see the president's agenda through for the next couple of years, they really need to elect Republicans. And everyone keeps saying that there's a blue wave coming, but in California, people are really pissed off. Sorry for saying that, but they're pissed off about taxes going up. I mean, the gas tax is just one example. Sanctuary state law is another example. People in California are upset with the state of affairs.
Yeah.
So I really feel a red wave coming out here in California.
What do you make of your governor, Jerry Brown? The president called him out, but I mean, he's been called out a lot. First of all, sanctuary cities, he's pardoned 5 illegal aliens with criminal records. The president refers to him as Governor Moonbeam. This is an issue that divides many in your state, specifically younger voters who tend to lean to the left. How do you appeal to them without alienating other millennials like yourself?
So I've actually been running a pretty nonpartisan campaign, and in that sense, I've been talking to voters. I haven't been saying telling everyone I'm running as a Republican unless they ask me. I mean, I'm not hiding the fact that I'm a Republican. You can Google me and find out that I'm very much a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been doing is I've been having conversations with people, and I've been asking them what's been upsetting them, and then pointing out the fact that it's Democrats who have done all of this to them. Democrats are the ones raising their taxes. The Democrats are the ones that are, putting their national security at risk with this border and the sanctuary state law. So people are really upset, and I'm just listening and telling them how I can help make a difference.
How do people out there on the left coast feel about those tax cuts?
They feel good about it in theory. I mean, there's a lot that, the state of California kind of got the bad end of the stick when it came to the tax
cuts. We did too here in New York. I feel the pain, but I mean, still, they're there. I mean, it's definitely, you're making more now every week or every other week than you were a year ago, and nobody can complain about more money.
No, and people are happy about it. People are really happy about it. But when I get elected to Congress, I do want to help New York and California both.
Why, thank you.
Get more, because we definitely deserve tax breaks in our two states.
All right, Morgan Murtaugh, thank you very much. Great to see somebody young and driven. That's excellent. Thank you so much.
And apparently they're not happy. We got that. New developments now in the battle for free speech on campus. We'll talk to a conservative speaker who says that she is seeing a major change in her audience. What is that change all about? She will explain live. Coming up.
Raged murder of a young Iraq war veteran who police say is behind a brutal attack. And we'll take you inside the most fortified military installation in North America. How men and women working under 2,000 feet of solid granite are keeping us all safe. Top of the hour.
Thank you, John. See at the top of the hour, possible turning of the tide in the battle for free speech on American college campus. My next guest says that her Make Campus Great Again talks have been drawing a different sort of audience. Lauren Cooley, Red Alert politics editor for the Washington Examiner from Fort Lauderdale today. How you doing, Lauren? Good morning. Good morning to you. So go ahead and tell our audience what you think. What sort of change do you notice in your speeches?
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure of traveling the country talking to college students all school year. The crux of my speech, Make Campus Great Again, is really just encouraging young conservatives to go out and be active on campus to promote free speech and free dialogue. But what I've noticed in the past few months is that more and more leftist students are coming to my events, and it's not to protest like you would think. It's actually because they're telling me they don't hear any viewpoints other than the leftist marching beat in their classroom, and so they're seeking out other ideological viewpoints, and they're having to come to me, a 25-year-old with a Make Campus Great Again speaking tour in order to hear conservative thoughts on campus.
That's interesting. I just want to read a little bit of what you wrote about, okay, on screen. Here we go. The crux of my speech is to encourage right-leaning campus activists to play offense instead of defense in the era of Trump. Recently, I've noticed a growing number of left-leaning students at my events, and not to protest, as you might assume. Instead, self-avowed Marxists and DACA-supporting students have been showing up to hear what I have to say. These students are starving for diverse ideas. I'm a little skeptical. Do you think this is just anecdotal?
You know what? I don't think it is, and here's a few reasons why. One, we had the Trump awakening, right, where moderate Democrats were happy to vote for a Republican because they're having this political awakening. We also have the whole Kanye West thing going on, where people are learning it's okay to be free thinkers. And so I'm not saying that there's not emotional, safe space loving campus snowflakes. There definitely are in large swaths. They hold a lot of power on campus. But I do think there are students who are bright and smart, and just because they're left-leaning doesn't mean they don't support free speech. And those students are being alienated by the extreme leftists on campus and are becoming allies of conservative students on campus just because they're okay with plural opinions and ideas and exploring new things, which is really the entire point of higher education to begin with.
Interesting point. You make the case, just to put a fine point on it, that safe zones are offensive to them? Because they're all about free speech?
Absolutely.
They talk to you about that?
Yeah, so I'll stay afterwards when I'm done speaking and talk to some of these students 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes. And the whole point of a safe space is to say that you're not emotionally mature enough or academically mature enough to encounter controversial ideas. So you can be the farthest left, like I said in my piece, you can be a Marxist, you can be super pro-DACA, but at the end of the day, if you're a mature adult, you can handle any type of idea thrown at you because it's just an idea. And so safe spaces are an assault on all students that are of a maturity. The real world's not like that.
Yeah, how many schools have you spoken at?
A couple dozen in the past year, everywhere from Northern California to Miami to Virginia and Texas, all across the country.